Hey, and welcome to yet another exciting episode of Chet Chat. We're off to New York today, and the guest on my show is a junior at Columbia University, Sanchit Jain. Hey Sanchit, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
So Sanchit, you're doing this really exciting double major with economics and South Asian studies. So tell us a little bit about these two majors.
Economics is easily the biggest major at Columbia, and there's a reason for that. At Columbia, they've kind of broken down economics into various parts. So you can just do economics, which is what I'm doing.
Okay.
Which means that you will have your core economics classes, which is your intro to micro, intro to macro, intro to econometrics, and then you'll do 5 electives and a seminar. Columbia has 5 different economics majors. You have economics and statistics and economics and math. So depending on which aspect of the quantitative side of things you're interested in, you can do either of those. And normally the department recommends that you do those majors if you're interested in going to grad school for economics, which means getting a PhD in economics. The reason for that is that if you want to do research in economics, academic research in economics, then it really is quite quantitative. They also have economics philosophy because you have to realize that, where modern economics began, Adam Smith, for example, and going into Keynes and all of these people, they were also philosophers in their own right. You have economics and political science. That's for people who are interested in public policy, in public administration, in government. Because both of those fields kind of gel really well and are the perfect path into being a good administrator in the public space. You also have financial economics for people who are more focused on finance. And the reason for that is that in most US colleges, from what I've seen, but especially at Columbia, you don't have a finance degree. You don't have an accounting degree. So this is the closest you can get to kind of getting those skills that other people might get. And it's kind of for people who are sure they want to go to Wall Street or they want to get into banking or investment banking or one of those things. And then for people who aren't that keen on kind of doing the whole thing, you have a concentration. And at Columbia, concentrations are like minors. They might be a little more than a minor. We don't have minors, so they're kind of the replacement for a minor. So you have 6 different economics majors and a concentration. The way economics is structured at Columbia, you have a common core that everybody is doing. And then after that, you kind of branch out into what you want to do. And there's obviously going to be overlap because the electives are offered to everybody.
Okay, fantastic. So you've actually shown us how many doors can open up for you with an economics major. But looking at your interesting combination with South Asian studies, how are you looking to take this forward?
Going into college, I think after having done a lot of MUN and I did an internship at the International Center for Research on Women between the 11th and 12th grades, that kind of pushed me into the space of public policy. That's what I was interested in kind of in a long-term sense, I would say. And so I really wanted to kind of understand the economic development side of things. So any class in econ that had anything to do with development. And so that's what my plan going into college was, to do an economics and political science major. I tried a political science class and realized that it wasn't for me. I was not that interested in the way we learn in political science. And so now I'm doing only economics. But what I've learned in the past 2 years is that to do work in development, you need your hardcore quantitative people. You need your people who know their numbers and who know their statistics. But you also need people who know the social and human side of things. Which is why I feel like something like South Asian studies complements eco perfectly. Being an Indian, my long-term goal is to come back and work in development in India, given that India is a developing country. So that's why I'm doing both. Specifically on development and how I got into development and what I'm doing there. Over the past 2 years, I've done 2 internships. The first summer I was doing an internship at Pratham. It's the largest education NGO in India. And there I was kind of working on something called Pratham Alumni Association, which they're trying to set up for all of their vocational skills students all across the country. This summer I was working at Ernst & Young in Delhi. And my goal there was to kind of understand what a consultancy can do in the development space. And so what I was doing was I was working in a team that works on public-private partnerships, specifically in the social sector, so education, health, agriculture. And doing that work, I kind of got interested in public health. And so, the good thing about a big university in the US, like Columbia, is that they have these schools that do various things. And Columbia has one of the best public health schools in the world. And so next semester, I'm going to start doing research at the public health school with a professor who's also a historian, which is very interesting because it then kind of combines my South Asian studies with my interest in development and economics.
I think it sounds fantastic. To me, this is like the epitome of what an undergrad education should be. Okay, looking at your South Asian studies and area studies in particular, a lot of students are wondering what this major is about, and would you like to share something about it?
Sure. The kind of area studies that we're studying in the US and that you'll see in US colleges is structured in a way that they basically divide the world into different areas, kind of similar to how the UN does that, and then they kind of study each area separately. So in Columbia, you have Latin American and Caribbean studies, you have Slavic studies, you have East Asian, South Asian, Middle Eastern, African, you have the whole range.
Right.
And you might think that this is similar to something like French studies or Germanic studies or Hispanic studies, but those are more focused on Europe and Western Europe and language focused. Area studies is slightly different because what it does is it looks at an area, so for example South Asia, and it says we're going to not only study language is not going to be the anchor, it's going to be incidental to our study. What is going to be the anchor to our study is the theory of studying these regions. So specifically what connects Middle Eastern, South Asian and African studies, which is why I think they're one major at Columbia, is that all of these regions have had some kind of experience with colonization, and post-colonial theory has been a very big shaping force in studying these regions. And so area studies for any of these regions and all of these regions at Columbia kind of says we're going to look at the geography and history, we're going to look at the culture, and culture extends to realms including language, literature, art, architecture, cinema, everything. And then we're also going to look at language. And while looking at all of these things, we're going to keep theory at the center of it. So it's very much a humanities subject that kind of combines political science and history and art history and your literature, all of these various subfields. The last thing I would say about something like area studies and MISAS at Columbia is that the classes are incredibly small. So my class in Indian cinema was 6 people. My class in Indian texts, which basically looked at a lot of classical texts in Pali and Sanskrit, translated of course, was 20 people.
Wow.
And so effectively, it's a good counterpoint to my economics major, which because there are so many people,
Right.
the classes are 50, 100 people.
Sanchit, when some of the applicants look at the Columbia form, they sort of feel overwhelmed because a lot of questions are to do with what books have you read and they write about all of that. So, is the Columbia core curriculum very, very reading intensive?
I can see why that would be the logical jump, because the form, I think, when I was filling it out, had 4 questions requiring, or 3 questions requiring me to list what books I'd read, what films I'd watched, what cultural performances I'd gone to, what newspapers I read, so kind of the whole works. I think I would explain that by saying that Columbia is it has this tradition that it's very proud of, and the tradition has everything to do with books and that kind of written word that we've received over centuries, and that has everything to do with the core curriculum. So the core curriculum has 2 anchors. Literature, humanities and contemporary civilization. The first one has to do with great literature in the Western tradition, and the second one has to do with great philosophy in the Western tradition. And if you think about it logically, the way we've got both of those sets of information or both of those sets of knowledge is books.
Right.
And so both of those classes revolve around reading, reading heavy, to the point where you're almost reading a book a week. But that sounds a lot more scary than it is. You have to obviously be comfortable with reading. You don't have to, if you kind of get scared by the prospect of reading 100, 150 pages a week, then that could be a little tough. So it is reading heavy, but I don't think it's any more reading heavy than any other humanities class. I'm going to come back to the application because I think that there are a lot of misconceptions regarding that. Recently a friend of mine who's applying to college now was asking me, I have 150 words to fill up in this section and I don't really have more than 10 things to put down. What do I do? And my advice in those situations, and I think it's been validated, is just be honest. As long as you have read something and it's related to your coursework in school, you can put that down. So they know that for somebody whose subjects clearly state physics, chemistry, math, English, and maybe a fifth or a sixth subject, they're not going to be doing a lot of reading in coursework. And so it's not something to get intimidated by. They're literally just trying to get to know that facet of you. I've been a part of this group called the Global Recruitment Committee at Columbia. They're looking for you to be as honest as you can be. And as long as everything kind of fits and is coherent, I don't think there's any problem.
Yeah. And looking at some of the other interesting activities that perhaps you've engaged in on campus, what would those be?
I think my biggest commitment has been this development group called Nourish International, which is basically a service group that sends students abroad over the summer to a developing country for like a 6-week service trip. I've also been involved with something called Asian Pacific American Heritage Month, and through April we kind of host all kinds of events, from concerts to panel discussions to interactive events on the topic of Asian, and that could be South Asian or East Asian or Southeast Asian, which is how it's defined in the US. That heritage. I've also been involved with this group called Sapna, which is an experimental South Asian collective. And a couple of my friends started it actually. Next semester I'm going to start doing research in the public health school, and I'm also going to be a teaching assistant in the economics department. The last thing that I would say was I came very close to joining a couple of dance groups. I've auditioned twice. And the only reason I didn't join both times was that I felt like it would be too much of a time commitment. But that's something I would definitely encourage people to do. It just seems, it seems like a lot of fun. They travel a lot, so you get to see the country, and they really have an amazing bond among the members in the group. So that's something that I've always wanted to do. If I wasn't doing all these other things, maybe. But
That is also fantastic. I love the way you exploited the flexibility that the American curriculum offers you and made the best of everything that came your way.
I've tried to do that.
So tell me, being in New York, right in the middle of the action, how does that affect your college life?
Columbia's full name is not Columbia University, it's Columbia University in the city of New York.
Okay.
And I think beginning with that, it just kind of affects everything. So I've done a couple of art history classes at Columbia. One thing that we've always taken advantage of is the museums. They really kind of embrace the city and say that our classes aren't going to be limited to the classroom or to our campus, but when you have the Metropolitan Museum, which is 25 minutes away, or you have the Whitney Museum, which is 40 minutes away, why not take advantage of those resources? Yeah. It goes beyond that. So you have Lincoln Center, where you have the Metropolitan Opera, which is very, very famous. So there's a class called Music Humanities, which everybody does, where you have to go for an opera performance there. There's a very, very famous class at Columbia. It's a class that a lot of people actually mention in their Why Columbia essays, called The History of the City of New York. In that, the professor, who's now like in his 60s or 70s even, leads a midnight bike ride around Manhattan and around the city.
Okay. Sounds so
fantastic. Yeah, it's just such a great way to kind of understand and explore the city in a different sense.
Of course.
Columbia, of course, has student discounts for everything. We have free entry to most museums. For Broadway shows, off-Broadway shows, operas, everything, we have discounts. Exploring different cuisines. So I've eaten Somali food, I've eaten Ethiopian food. And so going to New York and being in the center of all of this is just a completely different experience. Concerts, for example. Every big person comes to New York City and performs in New York City. So you have Coldplay and Beyonce, and this year you have Rihanna and Selena Gomez and Kendrick. And you have all of these people coming and performing for free. As in, like, your tickets are free, you just have to complete a few actions and win a lottery. And so you have these amazing opportunities right at your doorstep. You just kind of have to take advantage of them. Columbia specifically offers the best of both worlds. It's a campus in Manhattan.
Yes.
So it's a small, cozy campus. It's an oasis.
Yes.
But it's also Manhattan, where Times Square is 15 minutes away, where Union Square or like downtown is 30 minutes away.
And I'm sure going forward, your jobs, your internships, and just being there at the right time.
Definitely. I've seen for people interested in a whole range of things, whether it's NGOs and development and organizations like that, whether it's finance and Wall Street, whether it's art and art history, whether it's government, anything. You kind of have everything right there.
And I'm sure people watching the show are looking at this and comparing it to the small college town experience. And there are pluses and minuses on either end. But
this is probably a big plus.
Interesting.
You can't ignore New York City. It's always there.
So tell me, what's finally the Columbia stereotype?
There are a lot of stereotypes I think I've already mentioned. So you have people who read a lot, and you have people who are interested in that city life and kind of getting out, always busy, taking part in a lot of extracurriculars. All of that is there, but I think one thing that I was surprised by when I went, that I didn't know of, so I think people in India don't really hear much about this side of things, is that Columbia is very activist friendly, I would say. Or maybe that's the wrong way to put it, because you have activists who are constantly fighting against the bureaucracy and against the administrator. So maybe it's not activist friendly, but it's activist central for sure. And what I mean by that is your main building on campus is Low Library, and right outside Low Library you have a bit of an open space. And every 2 or 3 days or every week you will find a protest happening there. One time I was at a talk by the Filipino president, who had come for something called the World Leaders Forum. And I was in that talk, the Filipino president was talking, there was a question and answer session, and a couple of people got up, they had huge banners, like 6 feet long banners, and they started shouting slogans, and they wouldn't stop. The president requested them to kind of, or Prime Minister requested them to stop until he was done answering a question. They would not stop. Ultimately, public safety had to be, had to come in and take them out. And once you left Low Library after the talk was over and the president was going to leave, you realize that these people were outside, and there was a whole group of Filipino origin Americans, but also Filipinos from Philippines, who were there protesting the supposed atrocities committed by the regime in power. And I think that's telling on 2 fronts, right? One, you have people who are politically aware, socially aware, protesting on issues ranging from, Israel, Palestine, both sides, up to Philippines, worker solidarity, so local and global. That's the other thing, is that I think when you're politically aware or socially aware, because it's a diverse global campus, you have people from all backgrounds protesting all kinds of things.
All agendas, Okay, fantastic. So let's cap the show and tell us one fun experience that you've had.
Global Citizens last year, going for the festival, seeing Coldplay and Beyonce perform, but also you had everybody there. You had Michelle Obama, you had Ban Ki-moon, you had Malala Yousafzai, you had Bollywood actors like Kajol and Arjun Kapoor, you had Sunidhi Chauhan perform. So you had everybody from entertainment and the development world and politics there and talking for the sustainable development goals. So as a development person or someone who likes to think of himself as a development person, that was a fun way to see everything kind of come together.
So thank you so much. I think it was just fantastic having you on the show.
It's been my pleasure.
So thank you for being here.
Of course.
Please click the subscribe button below. Like me at facebook.com/ChetChat101. Follow my Twitter handle, ChetChat101, or at Instagram, ChetChat101. Please leave your comments in the sections below. And if you'd like me to feature any particular college, please let me know. Thank you.